probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here, back again for another edition of Summer School. That's our preview series for college football on the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. Today, Indiana. New blood there. I got my man Jared Kelly on the show with us today of Peegs.com, like the best Indiana site in the world, so might as well have him on to discuss this and fill us in. What's going on, man?
What's going on? First year on the Summer School series. A lot has happened in Indiana this offseason, obviously. It's great to be here. You guys have done a great job. So excited to talk about the Hoosiers.
I appreciate it. So new coach Kirk Cignetti comes in, did a great job at JMU, obviously, and prior stops as well. What will be the biggest on-field changes in terms of what they're running and how they operate that fans can look forward to seeing?
Yeah, first and foremost, two new offensive coordinators, basically, entirely revamped coaching staff. They brought back Bob Bostad, who is a really well-respected offensive line coach, but he was the only holdover. So the biggest thing you'll be seeing is, schematically, they will look a lot different on both sides of the ball. Kurt Cignetti is bringing both his offensive and defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator with him from James Madison to Indiana. On offense, Mike Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, not to be confused with the NFL Mike Shanahan. I know a lot of people thought they were the same people. They're not the same people. But this Mike Shanahan at Indiana, a lot of NFL concepts, spread style concepts. At JMU, they were super explosive through the air. And I think you'll see that. Defensively, Kurt Cignetti said, they want to build through the trenches. Last year they were prolific at James Madison at getting to the quarterback, defensive ends, defensive tackles, linebackers, everything. So we'll see how that translates to Indiana, but we'll see what you knew of Indiana under Tom Allen is not going to be the same Indiana going forward.
I realize this could yield a long answer from you, and I'm okay with that. Where, if anywhere, is this team noticeably better than it was last year?
31 new transfers coming in. I don't know if you had anybody on the podcast cover team with that many transfers coming in. So it really is, a type of deal where it's, we have to see it on the field first. A lot of these guys are coming from Group of 5 schools, even FCS schools. And, while they were super productive at those schools, you just never know how they're going to translate to the Big Ten before you see it. You have to think offensively they're going to be better, than they will be defensively. You think about they brought in, I think it was 5 or 6 receivers to the receiver room, super talented. They brought back Donovan McCulley, who was an All Big Ten performer last year. And then you go out and get Curtis Rourke, who was a 2022 All-MAC quarterback at Ohio. Brings really good stability to the quarterback position. And everything we've seen from the James Madison coaches, especially offensively, that came over to IU. I think they developed 3 straight Player of the Years in the Sun Belt on offense. So you have to really like what Mike Shanahan and then quarterbacks coach Tino Sinceri are building there. It's just I think IU fans will really enjoy watching this offense and how they attack and how they spread the ball out. It's not going to be like the sort of ground and pound that Tom Allen was trying to do last year. And then just defensively, I know a lot of folks have concerns about the secondary, some concerns about the defensive line. I think Indiana, for the most part, has done a good job to address at least the front 7 pretty adequately. You think about the spring portal, they went out and got Kent State transfer CJ West. I think like pretty much every Power 4 team was after him, and Indiana was able to go out and get him. So I think Indiana's done a good job in the front 7. The secondary is where Indiana could struggle this year. And if that doesn't really shore up, like, some people hope, that might be where Indiana, really tripped itself up coming into 2024.
What have you been able to see from Rourke? At his best, he was quite good for Ohio, but he also struggled with multiple injuries last year. Have you been able to see him much? And if so, how does he look?
Yeah, we didn't get to see him a ton during the spring, but we saw him during the spring game. I think the first thing that comes to mind when you watch him is, he's going into his 6th year. Obviously, he's been banged up a little bit with injuries. But this is a guy who knows how to play. He's a game manager. He's not going to put the ball in harm's way. And he can, do some damage with his feet. You look at him and, you don't need him to be, this sort of Heisman all-world quarterback. But at Indiana, you can't expect that. You need someone who's going to come in and lead your offense, protect the football. He's going to be able to pick up some yards on the ground. But in this offense, it's really just going to be spread the ball out, and can you get the ball into the hands of the playmakers? I think Curtis Work will do a really good job of that, given his experience. And then I really do like what Indiana's built in the quarterback room this offseason. You go out and get 4-star Tyler Cherry, who is a former Duke commit. He committed like 2 weeks after Cignetti arrived at IU, so that was huge. And then Taven Jackson, obviously a former 4-star as well, started last year a little bit. So he'll probably sit behind Rourke, but he'll get some valuable time to develop. So I really like what the quarterback room has kind of come into this offseason.
Who's a player that you would not expect to be voted onto the first or second team for the All Big Ten in the preseason, but may have a shot to be there come the postseason?
One guy I'm really high on, especially coming out of spring camp, especially on defense, is Aiden Fisher, James Madison linebacker. We did our own stats during the spring game, and obviously it's just a spring game. We had him at, I think 11 tackles. He was, flying around the field. IU's going to have a lot of, holes to fill defensively, but that is a guy who, is coming from James Madison, coming from that system, playing under the same defensive coordinator, understands what it means to, lead that defense. And I think he's got some sneaky, sideline to sideline speed. That's a guy who's going to rack up tackles in a hurry. I'm pretty confident in that. We'll see if he can, match up with the Big Ten speed and physicality, but I really like him. Now, whether first or second team for linebackers in the Big Ten is obviously very difficult, but he's a guy I really like. And then offensively, I think you could see one of the, wide receivers really kind of emerge that came over. Miles Price is in the slot. He's coming from Texas Tech. I mentioned Donovan McCauley. And then you have Elijah Surratt, who's the 4-star transfer from James Madison. He was an All-American last year. He put up huge numbers. He's in the same scheme that he was at James Madison. So he's a guy that I think can surprise a lot of people as well.
If you look at the overall transfer portal market, I think Indiana fans should be thrilled, really, that they were able to get a guy like Surratt. There were a ton of good slots and smaller body guys out there in the portal, but very few like good, legitimate sized X that you could go get. And he was one of them. So pretty fortunate that he had played, at JMU there. Where's a position where the room is just, other than receiver, it sounds like, is there another spot where they're just really deep?
It's tough to say running back because they brought in 5 transfer running backs and freshman running backs. So the entire room, not a single player from last year returned. But that room is coming out of spring camp, you really have to like what's coming. Tyson Law and Kaylon Black, 2 James Madison transfers once again. They were 2 of the leading rushers at James Madison coming over to IU in the same system. Then you go to Wake Forest, you get Justice Ellison, who is one of their top rushers. You go to North Carolina, you get Elijah Green, who had one good season in 2022, I believe, and then last year kind of fell off. So that's 4 guys who have been productive in the past, have demonstrated experience. And in the spring game, all 4 of them split touches pretty evenly. Like I said, it's a spring game, so we'll see how that translates. But the running back position is going to be a huge part of what Mike Shanahan wants to run in his spread offense. Whether it's in all 3 phases, blocking, catching, and obviously running the ball. So I really like how deep that spot is there.
Which fall position battles do you think will matter the most for this team?
You'd have to go defensively, first and foremost. In the secondary, cornerback and safety are the 2 glaring positions I had mentioned earlier. At safety, you bring in Old Dominion transfers, Sean Asbury, Terry Jones. You'd have to think those 2 guys are going to start, at the safety and sort of nickel rover position. But behind them, you don't really know what you're going to get in terms of depth. Amari Farrell is going to be a true sophomore next year. He was the only guy last year who did not redshirt. So you think he's going to take another step. But beyond those 3 guys, it's kind of a toss-up, in the back, in the safety position, who's going to step up. And then cornerback, you lose Kobe Minor, who was an All-Big Ten performer last year. He transfers to, I think it was Memphis. You get Jameer Johnson back. You get JoJo Johnson back, Jamari Sharp. So 3 guys who are returners who played a lot of snaps last year. But even then, you're still looking at, who's coming in behind them. James Madison transferred D'Angelo Pons at cornerback. He was a big get, very coveted in the transfer portal this spring, and IU was able to bring him over. So we'll see how he can translate, freshman All-American. But again, moving from the Sun Belt to the Big Ten will be an adjustment. So those 2 positions in particular, you're looking at cornerback and safety. IU's going to have to do a lot of work to get to where they need to be for the season opener.
interesting that they took 2 Old Dom DBs.
Yeah.
Did they play Old Dom last year, or do they have like a connection to Old Dom? They were. I know it's the same state, but like that just it doesn't strike me as like, oh wow, yeah, Old Dom. That's an obvious connection to Indiana and Jamie, right?
Yeah, no. So they're part of the Sun Belt last year, Old Dominion, and they were pretty successful, I think, down there. But this whole offseason, Cignetti from day one, his introductory press conferences preached, we are going to the transfer portal, getting productive players, not guys who, former 4-stars, 5-stars who haven't done anything. We want production over potential. So those 2 Old Dominion transfer safeties are perfect, representation of that. Both of them were all Sun Belt selections. They've started for multiple years. They know how to play football. They're not guys that are going to come in and have to have their hand held by the new coaching staff. They're plug and play guys. So you look at these guys who might not have the sexiest previous schools attached to their name, but these guys know how to play football, and we'll see obviously if the talent will translate to the Big Ten.
Schedule-wise, this sets up fairly well for them. Like a bowl is not a lock, but it is certainly a decent possibility with a cakewalk non-conference of FIU, Western Illinois, and Charlotte. They should be 3-0. Just roll the ball out there, and several other winnable games. I mean, probably not Ohio State and Michigan, but in theory, everyone else is at least kind of winnable if they're maybe slightly better than we think they are.
Yeah. This is going to be Indiana's easiest schedule in years. I said this in a mailbag I did on our site recently. The East-West divisions dying are probably the best thing Indiana football has had going for it in a lot of years now. You don't have to play. You're not locked into playing Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State every single year. And this year, like you mentioned, the 3 non-cons, should be bye games. IU is actually scheduled to play Louisville to continue that series, but they made the wise decision to back out of that and then schedule another bye game. So theoretically, you should be 3-0, if not 4-1 4-0, 3-1. Coming out of week 4, halfway to bowl eligibility. That's really all you can ask for. And then, like you mentioned, obviously Ohio State and Michigan are going to be tough ones, but you only have to travel to Ohio State. You get Michigan at home, you get Washington at home, Nebraska at home, and Purdue at home, which has always been the sort of make or break for bowl eligibility. So you really look at the schedule from top to bottom. This is not the top 20, top 10 hardest schedules in the nation that you've seen from Indiana in recent years. So if IU is going to make some noise with a first year coaching staff, you're probably not going to get a better schedule than what they have this season.
You mentioned Louisville, and it strikes me as something that we had asked Jeff Brom about prior to last year, and I think most coaches would have shied away from it. But Louisville had it very obvious for those of us who follow the ACC closely that they had a cakewalk schedule and something that they could use if they played well, really take advantage and get the ball rolling with serious momentum in a year one of coach, as it was Brom's first year at Louisville. And he was like, no, hey, with all due respect to our opponents, we're not going to shy away from the fact that we have an opportunity in front of us. It does seem like this is super important for Cignetti to actually cash in this type of schedule, because it's not guaranteed to, like you may not dodge Oregon next year, right? Or like UCLA may be better in 25 than they are 24. So I know we'll be watching. We'll be following all your coverage on Peegs.com. Awesome Indiana site. And man, I'm glad we had you on. It was so much fun.
Thanks so much for having me. No, this was it's a great time. And you guys doing some great work over here. So
I appreciate it.